Computer. Hello, welcome to episode number 5, Careers of Folly and Wisdom. I'm R. Michael Fisher, and I have my guest today, Randy Crutcher. We're going to be entering a dialogue here that is really about people who have had many careers. That's one thing I'm interested in. And what they've learned from mistakes, we call folly, and what wisdoms they've gained. So that's really what it's about today. I'm just going to turn it right over to you, Randy, to just pronounce your name for us, say where you are today, and why you're here in this program.
Well, thanks, Mikhail. My name is Randy Crutcher, but when my mother was irritated or angry with me, she would say, Randall Scott Crutcher. And I am located on the banks of Arroyo Hondo in the ancestral lands of the Tewa people who are quite vital and growing their culture still here in northern New Mexico. So I'm at the outskirts of Santa Fe, New Mexico, the highest altitude capital in the United States, 7,000 feet
Okay.
above sea level. And we have mountains that rear up to almost 13,000 above us.
Well, okay, that's high. High is high. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I was just sharing with Michael that the morning's activity was a wonderful 4 mile hike through alpine meadows and woods and streams within a half hour of where we live down on the steppes, the great vast expanse with ranges of mountains on every side.
I hope to make it down there someday,
You are always welcome.
and go for a hike with you.
Be my guest.
So where in the heck did we meet the first time, and what was our first impressions is always kind of a fun thing to share. Uh,
It's really a unique and a different kind of encounter, first
yeah,
encounter
yeah.
of the first kind. We both volunteered in a faculty meeting with Southwestern College and the
Santa Fe,
transdisciplinary
in Santa
Santa
Fe.
Fe in Santa Fe, the transdisciplinary PhD in visionary practice and regenerative leadership. And we found out that we don't fear to tread in unknown territory. We jumped in along with another colleague to start a dialogue and conversation about just what the heck transdisciplinarity means
Right.
and to do some advanced thinking and then plug that into the larger faculty group and let them take it from there.
Well, that's funny because that's our second encounter, by the way.
Oh
It's
my
always
goodness.
good to have it's always good to have a relationship and go, oh, when was it? Oh, when did we have our first honeymoon? When?
Oh, oh, that's so sweet. I trust my friends and colleagues' memories better than my own.
Yeah,
What
boy,
was our first encounter?
ditto. But I did think of where the first was, and it's the first where I really met Randy Crutcher, which was really like only maybe 5, 6 months ago, maybe at the most. And it was actually at the first faculty meeting. I think you came because you were a mentor for somebody, and you showed up at the faculty meeting, and I saw
Oh,
you
right.
there. I didn't know who you were, so it was all kind of brand new, but you were provocative.
Oh, right at the
Right.
outset.
I'll tell you, it's cute. It's cute, and you'll get to observe whether this was folly or wisdom or both. Let's go for it. I appreciate you hanging in with me. So, first impression, you were very quiet the whole meeting. Of course, you're brand new, kind of coming in. I know you've also worked at the college a long time, off and on. So it's not like you're brand new, but you're brand new, I think, to the VPRL group,
Yes.
the Visionary Practice Group. And at one point, people were just sharing, and you jumped in with your reading of E.O. Wilson's book, Consilience.
Mhm.
I think it's like the first thing you said in the whole meeting. And so I'm going, okay, this is like, I know Yo Wilson. I'm really, way back in the day. But it was your bravado of sort of just blustery enthusiasm, I'll call it. And you can defend yourself or not. And you said, E.O. Wilson in this book, this is the most brilliant intelligence on the planet today. And you just got to read it. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but that was it. And I went, oh, okay.
Passionate promotion is definitely one of my things. And actually, our colleague Carlos,
Right.
he calls it contagious enthusiasm. And so, there's certain things that I want to go viral, and I guess that I literally, like you, embody what I read, right? It goes right into our nervous system. I'm a rather slow reader. I can take a long time to read a 500-page book, but I am absorbing, thinking, and stopping and pausing and reflecting the whole time. So I had just finished E.O. Wilson's not
Oh,
long ago, his latest trilogy before he died,
okay.
the Anthropocene series.
Okay.
And so I'm going, this is where way, way after Consilience. And so I've
Okay.
read, 6 or 7 of his volumes now. And so on that basis, on that foundation, I felt very equipped to say, this guy was, the Darwin of our times, and to kind of wax pretty poetic and praiseworthy of E.O. Wilson, who lived the longest time of any of these great geniuses, and also probably explored more square hectares of the planet than any other human being.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Did
Yeah,
not
so
know
there I
that.
am promoting again. You see, it's
You
just
were.
natural.
You were. And when I've looked at, some of your bio, you seem to have started off as one of these, I'm not going to say upstart, I'm just going to say very enthusiastic, catalytic, um, contagiously brave. I think you're like 19 years old when you bought your first piece of land. How is that even possible? Like, I know what I was
Right.
doing when I was 19. How did you get there in your background, and just tell us a little bit about that big move to buy some land I think in the redwood country down there,
Thank you. Thank
California.
you. Yes, I just had to immediately say that the reaction of some of my college age friends was, "You did what?" So, a lot of who I am is standing on the shoulders of my parents, who were both educators.
Okay.
And my mother was an elementary school teacher. My father went all the way through with his EDD. His dissertation was the supervision of foreign language instruction in the California State Public School System. And he was a Toastmaster, taught me how to give speeches at age 14. Everything that he gave me, and he was very physical. He was a wrestler and a bodybuilder, and there was so much there to model after, and there were things to not model after, as we all know, because our parents are human too, even though we don't quite know that early on. So my parents, educators in the U.S., perhaps in Canada as well, don't make much money. So they look for other things to raise their standard of living and become full-fledged middle class people. And so they dabbled in real estate later in
Oh,
their careers.
okay. Okay.
And my dad got a real estate license and got some rentals. And I saw how he operated his business. And so after the first year in college, part of it in the dorms and part of it in a communal household, he said, well, you've got a little money. We'll give you a little money, and you can make a down payment, $2,000 on an acre with a house that's been, remodeled. And at that time and that economy, it was actually possible to do that. It was a very depressed area,
Okay.
300 miles north of San Francisco near the Oregon border. So it was a rural county, and property values were such that it was actually possible to put a down payment of a few $1,000s. And thereafter, and my parents had a lot of confidence in me to be able to manage it on my own, to go to school, work part-time in the summer, and manage basically what became communal households. My friends were my first renters. I learned a lot about consensus decision making, and I learned about how to, even in the difficult role of landlord, to learned a lot about shared power rather than power over. Early on, maybe part of that was intuitive, some of it from my parents, some of it the era. We were in an anarchistic
Right.
time. Nixon was our president, and we were rebelling a lot against old structures, strictures, and institutions. And so and that was a time in the 60s before I started that, where some model eco egalitarian communities in the US. I'm not familiar, but I'm sure the movement existed in
Yeah,
Canada.
a little bit, a little bit.
You a little bit. Well, compared to the vastness of the US, it was a little bit in the US. And there's some famous ones that still exist today, and many
Yeah.
did not make it. That wasn't my vision. I wasn't trying to do that. I was trying to get through college and be able to pay my own mortgage, right?
Hmm.
So that was it. But I learned so much in households of three, four, five, and up to six people and their dogs.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
had chickens and we grew a garden and we made our own yogurt and granola and baked our own bread. And we had no television, no screens. We had guitars and a stereo in the house and we made music. We made food. We
Yeah.
lived many of the facets of what I would call sustainable lifestyles.
So I'm just guessing this kind of sustainability is and communal spirit is just so part of your background growing up. I also see, you're a part of a church community very early in your life, and it just feels like you always had that package. And very different than me. I'm kind of the family of the working poor class. Everybody's out on survival, no religious, spiritual containers for anything really, or communication systems beyond just survive. Brother, we're going to play in a rock band. We were little
Wow.
entrepreneurs, at
Yeah.
14. And like you, in a way, you were starting an entrepreneur track. Would you still call yourself basically and fundamentally an entrepreneur? Is that something you're
Uh,
comfortable with, or a
yes,
social entrepreneur?
actually, when I started working in human services
Yeah.
and nonprofits, and I would usually be hired because I was someone who could either start or expand a program within the agency.
Yep.
I began to call myself an intrapreneur.
I've heard of that word. Just explain what you think
It's yeah,
what is.
it was coined in the 80s, and
Yeah.
it means somebody who is not primarily apart from an agency or institution with their own business, but working within an organization to
All right.
develop. And there might be revenue generating
Yeah.
um, possibilities, but the primary goal was not that. And I'm an educator, so I was developing education programs pretty much. And those were new, novel. My first effort at that coming out of graduate school was to create a state grant funded center for men's wellness
Yeah.
that was actually targeting young males around a responsibility for using birth control and being, healthy communication and relationships and that sort of thing. But
Yep.
it became more than just about reproductive health. And that was under the umbrella of a primary health care clinic. So I didn't have the label initially, but by the time I worked for a very tried and true organization, Planned Parenthood, before that, I realized I was an entrepreneur. I was developing something under the umbrella of a nonprofit
Yeah.
that had not existed before.
So would you see yourself as a bit of a visionary as well?
Uh, sometimes,
Or are you kind of grabbing other people's thing and then you're really good at taking it to the next level?
yes, I think it's not exclusive of the first, but it's more true of the latter that you said. For instance, this center, I didn't write the original grant.
Yeah.
A man and a woman wrote the grant, and then they realized their career track was something different, and they came to me and they said, "We think you're the one who could actually make this happen." And and then they had a friend, a woman, and the two of us rewrote the grant, submitted it to the State Office of Family Planning in California, and we were funded. So we were not the original visionaries for Everyman Center. That was the name.
Right.
But we did take it and we activated it. Another example is a community trails association there was a vision for a community trail system along this corridor in the Sierra Nevadas of California. I didn't start the vision, but I joined the visionary and who really didn't have the skills and repertoire to put real wheels under it. And I created a nonprofit community organization that is thriving today that it's really raised the whole self-esteem of this community and the whole capacity for engaging people in the outdoors and nature.
So, you're pretty successful life. I've read your thing. I'm listening to you. I look at you and I go, this is somebody who's very successful in the world. Like
Oh,
puts
thank
boots
you.
on the grounds, puts wheels to get things going, and you love it. I just get a sense you're pretty much always enthused with what you do. Like I can't believe you take on anything you're not enthused with. So
Right.
where's the folly in someone that looks so
Well,
good, and is
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
accomplished, right? Let's talk about folly and wisdom.
yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, I suffer like so many from imposter syndrome
Oh, okay.
in the way of who am I to do, I go through that. Think, who am I to do this? Who am I to do that? I don't have the skills or repertoire. I felt it again when I joined our transdisciplinary group. I go,
Okay.
these people are far more, academically grounded in this concept, and I'll just listen and follow along and hope to learn something. And part of that was my natural curiosity, but a part of it was like that imposter syndrome. And then all my life, I've had part of me is going, well, you never actually achieved a middle class salary and income and benefits. You never achieved, any great status or prestige or given career awards or advanced. And I hesitate to use these words because it's such a mythos, destructive mythos, the self-made man. But there's
Yes.
something in the making of myself that was more important to me than status, prestige, or money. And I did, one time I did help raise a little boy for a while with a partner, but I never had biological children, so I
Okay.
don't have grandchildren.
All right.
And so instead, I go, I have some freedom here. All I need to do is create sufficiency, not surplus. And so I had a whole way of looking at that. And my church, which was an anti-church, was a philosophy of manifesting what really needed to come into your life in the world
Yeah.
through, powers greater than yourself, but not this God, the God in the sky God.
Yeah.
So that was deeply rooted at a young age. That if I really wanted to see something, if I felt strongly about creating something in the world, that I would not be held back by thinking we can't afford it or no one's ever done it, so I can't do it. Those the limiting self beliefs and they're there. The imposter syndrome was there, but like the artist George O'Keeffe said, I've been terrified all my life, but that never stopped me. I didn't mean to enter that quote, but it's one of the quotes that sticks with me,
Yeah.
about and I have a Goethe quote too that backs that up that I can
Okay.
share at the
Yeah.
appropriate
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. So just again, I'll remind you, if there's anything about a folly in all of that,
Yeah.
possibly that led from imposter syndrome, right? That maybe led to some decision making, some incidents, that you had to learn some pretty tough lessons. Could you share some of that?
Yeah. The I think that the biggest lesson that I learned is when I got involved with larger institutions and I wasn't on any career or tenure track of any kind, that people
So
I read,
you're teaching.
yeah, I was teaching. Yeah, I was always adjunct,
Okay, adjunct, yeah.
always adjunct. That that was going to limit me. I mean, that wasn't a great the great tragedies in my life have been more a relationship breakup that changed my life
Sure,
rather than a career breakdown
that's totally fine to
because I
talk
wasn't
about.
career oriented. So I wasn't going to have career breakdowns
Right.
as much as coming to these points, Mikhail, of going, oh my God, this thing that I identified with, that I was passionate about, The passion's gone. And here's the example. So
Yeah.
thanks for continuing to
Yeah.
prod me in this direction. Really appreciate it. I started a court mandated counseling program for men who batter. That's in that CV I shared. And that was that first wave of group treatment for domestic violence. And I was going strong with that for 4 years, working in tandem with women's shelters and other men's programs. And that my master's thesis was on the efficacy of group treatment for men who batter. And all of a sudden, I literally felt like my whole body just felt like the bottom fell out. There was no longer of great interest or passion. I went to a psychic. Actually, the psychic was the man who I replaced at Planned Parenthood years before, who had had career change, and one of his skills and abilities was channeling, and I was open to that kind of thing. And at my 30s, I got my first channeled session, which was equivalent of 30 psychotherapy sessions. Anyway,
Okay.
this guy Steve said, he said, the reason it's not there anymore is you have fulfilled this. In another life, you were a conquistador. You were a brutal conquistador responsible for the destruction of many lives. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying I buy into this
I know. I hear you.
completely, but there was something about that that resonated. It's like, well, okay, how could something that I identified with so much, like I was a pioneer in this, right? I mean, if I had status and prestige, it
Yeah.
was not acknowledged in a traditional conventional way, but it was acknowledged amongst my peers and amongst the people across the United States who I helped become networked and organized around this mission. And it was gone. And I'm going, well, it would have had to be something that big, even if this is not completely true. So it was fascinating, right? That
Yeah.
somehow, and then it put me at great ease.
Did it?
It did. It did. It was like, oh, I'm done. I did that. And that was still, that was still in my 30s.
So it's kind of interesting that that background, just I'm interrupting a little bit here, but that it's kind of folly in a way, right? It's like in some level you're going, wow, I have this background potentially where I'm now, in a sense, repairing a historic traumas that my soul has been on a journey. We're just being even metaphor or
No,
real.
beautiful. I accept all of that.
There's something interesting about you really had to accept maybe for the first time, like, holy, I'm not like just ordinary here. I'm maybe have some repair work to do on this planet. Not just be a good guy, not just be doing good stuff,
Right.
that's socially acceptable. Did you think about that now, or even did you think about it? And so did it move to a different kind of wisdom positioning for you?
Yeah. I have pulled in and out of academe and even intellectual pursuits. And so I actually apprenticed to a contractor and was just a grunt.
Mhm.
And I go, I need this. I was in this liminal space
Okay,
where I was like, the old chrysalis metaphor, which is so
right.
powerful, right? In many respects, individually and globally. And so I went into a chrysalis, in my 30s. And I was just doing, punching the time clock and doing the job. And then part of the folly was at a certain point, I wasn't showing up for work on time and I was fired.
Yep,
Okay. And so we're getting into more of the hard stuff
exactly.
around folly. And I go, oh, okay. Well, I wasn't completely conscious of how that I'm done with this liminal
Right.
phase, right? I'm not quite clear about what's next, but in a way I was, because when I went to graduate school thinking I was going to be a community college instructor. Well,
Yeah.
I didn't become one after graduate school. I went to work, as I said, in the nonprofit world. And so after this liminal phase of being just a laborer for a contractor, a good friend came and said, "Hey, I put in a good word for you at the extension campus, and they need somebody to teach both psychology and sociology. At that time, community college system allowed somebody without
Yeah,
a master's in that specific thing to cover more topics. So I jumped in, and all of a sudden, here I am going from being a grunt laborer to teaching three full-on semester-long courses, an hour and a half drive from my home, and a new world, completely new
that
world.
is
I was teaching in a town called Crescent City, California, adjacent Pelican Bay State Prison. And my students, some of them were prison
right.
guards
Yep,
and family members of the inmates, which couldn't be more perfect for a sociology instructor.
very nice.
So, so they're from being fired to being hired.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you
you
remember
know,
yourself as an educator in those kinds of situations? Like, what do you think stood out, or what did you develop that you maybe wouldn't have developed before?
I was given, we talk about academic freedom, but when you're in the community college system, you're given textbooks, course outlines, a lot of structure and whatnot. But at this campus, there were courses like ethnic relations, and they were in the catalog, and there was no real curriculum, not even a textbook. So the favorite course in my life that I developed from the ground up was ethnic relations.
Mm.
And I went to professors in all the ethnic studies departments at California State University, Humboldt. And I said, if you had your students read one book that would shift their worldview about this subculture, these people, what would it be? And I created a book list from all of their recommendations. And they were both novels
Okay.
and nonfiction, but gripping in their way of giving the life experience of people very different from my students. So they had that perspective in that world
Yeah.
opening up to them. And then I would also give them assignments like go out and here are some parameters, go out and meet somebody as different as you as possible. And here's how you can introduce yourself. And here are some questions you might begin with.
How'd that go?
That went phenomenal. The feedback and the stories people told. And I had students in that class. I had Native American grandparents, prison guards.
Oh,
I mean, I had this incredible reentry students that wasn't the typical freshman in community
yeah,
college situation.
yeah,
It was one of my favorite teaching settings of all time
mm,
because of its diversity generationally, ethnically, racially, gender.
yeah.
Uh, and so I had people at the end of that course going, you know what? This is the best course we have ever had. That was my reward,
That's a great
one of
reward.
my
Yeah.
biggest teaching rewards, because I really tried to think about how people could embody a different experience around ethnic relations. And I also met a Native man who I'm friends with today, who actually ended up coming up to the men and boys gathering that I
Mhm.
founded. That's in its 34th year.
Right.
And it was surprised me because coming from his culture, I thought, what's he going to get out of a white man's men's gathering, right? Well, he said it was a pivotal time for him and it made a huge difference. He's an award-winning Native American artist, national award-winning, and there's a documentary film made about him. And I'm sharing that with I've already shared that with my mentee at Southwestern, who probably arranged an interview with this man. But he was a guest speaker in that class. And so that was another gem,
Yeah, yeah,
that people took away.
yeah.
So,
I want to circle back to quite a few things with you, and but I want to ask you to bring your quotes forward. I asked you to bring a couple quotes. You've already said one, but I'd like you to share it again and why you picked it, and then share the other one, and we'll just go from there. Thanks, Randy.
yeah, beautiful. Really enjoying this, Mikhail. Thank you for the opportunity. So, the first quote, it'll be probably very familiar, but it's been running through um, my life and mind for years. Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. And that's Goethe.
A long time ago.
Kind of a corollary quote of Goethe's is, "Knowing is not enough. We must apply. willing is not enough. We must do.
Why'd you pick that
I really, uh, I really think that that's been such um, uh, a lighthouse and a guiding post in my life is um, action is so important to me. And I'm willing to risk folly to actually be out there and doing something for which I don't know the outcome or the consequences. And this quote, this boldness, I guess I can claim some of this boldness
one? Yeah.
in different areas of my life. And out of taking action, I feel assisted. I do feel assisted by a larger cosmic energy or force when I make the effort. And the more effort I make, the more power and magic is in it. And that my dissertation back, by the way, was a contribution to the field of action research, and it was an action learning methodology or
Wow.
action research methodology utilizing action learning. So that the language is me. In 2012, 2013, I was in Peru, and the group that I was with, two other couples, my wife and two other couples, we didn't want to just be tourists. So in advance, we worked with a one-man tour company in Peru to set up three encounters with three different shaman in three different places in Peru. And the first place was out of Cusco, woman. And we were with a guy who's quite an entrepreneur as a shaman, and I still hear about him today, all these years later. Friends of mine have gone down and they meet this guy. Anyway, we're doing around a fire, doing ritual. People were getting kind of readings from him, and his name was Freddie. And Freddie could speak his native Incan language. He could speak Spanish. He could speak English, and he could speak Californian, hip Californian. And but he said to me in plain language, he said, "What was he? There was a reading of, was it not tea leaves, but something similar as a device for telling or intuiting." And he just said to me, which I kind of thought at the moment was, "Is that all there is?" He goes, "You are a man of action. You always need to be taking action." Now, this is about 10 years after I finished my dissertation. But, initially I was a little disappointed. It was kind of, God, isn't there
Yeah.
something a little more glamorous than
Yeah. Yeah.
that?
I hear you.
You know?
Yeah. You could get
And
that.
I go, but then, as I'm walking away, I'm going, he nailed me. That's it. That's how I would deal with, sadness or grief or depression. I wouldn't try and suppress, I don't suppress, but I do take action. That action may be, okay, calling that friend with that's surviving pancreatic or lung cancer, making that connection, and not sitting and stewing about, my own unknown forthcoming cancer, or I can't do anything for that friend or person. There's always something in I can do. So I think that Goethe quote
Yeah.
and corollary quote do really apply as guideposts and lighthouses.
Yeah. It's sort of a can-do attitude, which, you could say is very American. It's very sort of, but it's also pragmatism of native peoples, as I understand that's how they operate as well. You learn by doing, you do by learning, and everything is so pragmatistic. And it very
Right?
much fits a lot of American culture. Now, I'm speaking as a Canadian. You can see I've got a little bit of distance on American culture, and
Yeah, I
sometimes
love that.
one of the things that I have struggled with American culture, and I'll just say it in a very large way, and is that heavy pragmatism of action. And I want to get people thinking in ideals more, and actually going with that for a while and hanging out with there before you jumping. I was in a community. So back in 1980,
Yeah.
here I am in a conscious community, first time. We
Mhm.
called them conscious community. 1980. This was the Brain Mind Bulletin coming out of
Mm.
California. It was coming up into Canada, and I joined this community for the first time with my wife, and I had children there as well. I didn't
Wow.
know anything about how to do community. It's just that there were some interesting people reading really interesting books like Marilyn Ferguson's Aquarian Conspiracy,
There
you
it is,
know,
the
right?
seminal text.
It was like that was like for a boomer, that was like the text that would lead us into this new age, this Aquarian conspiracy and changing of the world for the better. It was just the next level of the love generation of the 60s. And I just remember going into that community and realizing how I did not understand or knew a lot about community, period, and relationships much. I was very much a science guy, idea guy. I mean, it's not like I didn't have jobs that were action based. They were in different careers. But when I got into that community and when we started trying to just talk about how to put big ideas, right? Big new ideas into then manifestations in the community, I'm okay with that. I have no problem with that. I was always the one that was holding back to have a longer discussion and deeper on the ideas, the paradigm, right, that we were supposedly operating on. I really wanted to do more of the psychological inner work of our motivational bases, that why are we doing this really? And what I found, it was very painful because most of the people in the community, especially some of the men, let's go do something.
Right.
Enough. I don't know how many times you've been in community where somebody wants to go deeper, they want to hold more reflective space, even more healing space for sharing, intimacy, connection. My position is I don't want to go do a bunch of action with people I don't feel close to. And then they would argue, yeah, well, you won't feel close to them until you do it. And I was always in that conundrum. So, any comments you have about that conundrum?
Oh, you're going to love the complementarity of my response because I'm with you on this. I was pretty cautious as I was out in nature as a boy. I took some risks, but I didn't do all the stupid stuff the kids that broke their limbs did because I was just cautious. I was slower. I
Okay,
was more thoughtful. And I think that evolved into adulthood as really taking the time to think before acting. And in fact, the men's group movement that I got involved in my 20s was guys sitting around talking. We weren't playing golf, we weren't drinking, we weren't out there hustling. We were reflecting and sharing and talk story, it's called. The Polynesians use that term and others too. A lot of talk story, which I always regard as doing something, but it doesn't fit that mold of let's just get out there and
right,
do. I mean, part of the reason I moved from being a therapist to a life coach because I was more interested in helping people reflect a whole lot more on what mattered the most to them in their heart. And I would always say, we live in a culture where people are taking action all day long, but how much of that action is connected to their deepest passions and sense of purpose.
right.
And so that is at the heart of my
Okay.
my self-coaching, my life coaching for clients, and my dissertation was the what I contributed to action research was another contemplative step. It
Okay.
was generative reflection. So there was a lot of the emphasis was on reflecting after the action was taken.
Mhm.
I emphasized reflecting before the
Boy,
action was taken
yes.
and after. And as being involved in psychology and sociology, the part of this imposter syndrome was going, how am I doing all this work in the community? I'm not an organizational psychologist, or I'm not academically a community psychologist, but I'm doing the work. So I went back and got my doctorate to really understand organizational processes and
Right.
systems
Yeah.
to actually help explain to me what I did
Okay.
and what happened and what DNA creates is likely to create it's complex, but what DNA is most likely to arrive at not success, but fulfillment, um, and meaning, and connection. And I think that's why this men's weekend for men and boys is 36 years old because I did not want it to be a personality cult. I wanted the DNA that I wanted was that it was it was not it was for no one and everyone. And that's as a young person in a commune, those are all really difficult challenges, right? And so I really empathize with where you were about, hey, dudes,
Yeah.
hold on, hold your horses. What's this really about? What's your motive, right? What is your motive for taking this action? So I'll stop there.
Yeah, well, and of course you can see why that would lead to my career since 1989. And I was introduced to reevaluation counseling in 1983, by the way. I saw that in your resume. We'll hopefully
Oh
chat
my.
about that. I've been practicing it ever since. So 1989, my project was, to study fear and its influence on life. I called it fearology. I didn't at the time. I just knew that there was something very powerful in the communities I'd been in. And I'd been in different ones, a therapeutic community, conscious living community, my own community where I was the leader visionary for 9 years and led that in a sort of a city hub. And it was again open door, kind of like mustard seed approach kind of community. But all of those communities, and I know you have been in many too, is um, one of the follies, I will say. I should say, I was interested in when is something fear based and when is it not.
Mm.
And that might make a big difference to outcomes for people, individuals, groups, communities, institutions. So then I started
Yes.
digging into the literature and sociology, which was coming out in 1990. Later, years later, probably about 1995, 96, 97, on the culture of fear. So a lot of people across disciplines, but a lot of sociologists were saying, we live in a culture of fear. This is not just psychological dynamics. And it's not just about fears. There are actually, you could call them mutated DNA designs going on that are influencing organizational systems. And you can call that deficit-based thinking systems. You can call it, toxic-based systems. You can call them oppression-based systems. Yeah, those are all still there and appropriate words. I just said I'm going to name it fear-based, and I'm going
Yeah.
to name it
Yeah.
a culture of fear and see where that goes. So I'm on that track for 37 years now and still on it.
Wow. Yeah. Fascinating.
Motivation.
I don't know when I started saying this, and I haven't really engaged the term with a lot of groups, but I've often said we live in a punishment society, right? Which is the clear linkage to what instills fear.
Yeah.
Constant mistreatment and disrespect and punishment bring out that, you've studied it from every angle. Fear is a necessary survival mechanism, but when it becomes distorted through our mistreatment of each other and from childhood on. Yeah.
And you think of reevaluation counseling theory, which basically is a peer-based grassroots movement, wonderful movement across the world for the last 80 years, started by Harvey Jackins and then took off by other people and a few other leaders. How did you get in here of reevaluation counseling as a basically a grassroots model of healing through liberation of ourselves with each other?
Yeah, I like that was a nice nutshell, by the way, Mikhail. In 1980, I took my first fundamentals class,
Okay.
and it was a friend of mine who had started a business installing wood stove hot water heating systems. Uh, I think I met him before the business, but he ended up installing one for me. I used 20 years. Anyway, he was a certified teacher and he was excellent, excellent co-counselor. And we had a group of people, some of which went on to get certified themselves. I think I might have been become certified somewhere before by the mid 80s or late 80s. I took more than one fundamentals class, no two were alike. But I was enthralled because, my high school biology teacher had taught me systems thinking through ecology within biology.
Yeah, I saw
So
that.
so that was I was able to see just, oh my gosh, this is whenever Harvey would say we are swimming, in distress, we might get the tip of our nose. That was an analogy
Yeah.
out of the distress. And I was in workshops with Harvey.
Oh, were you? Okay,
Yeah.
I wasn't. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, he's a leader who fell from grace like many gurus do, but he was
for sure.
powerful to watch,
I'll bet.
both his technique and the way people would respond, and that another little bit of reemergence there on stage
I saw a
with
few
Harvey
videos.
Harvey.
I saw a few
Yeah, yeah,
videos over
and
there.
I think his son Tim is still at it. I'm not
Tim's
sure.
still at it. Yeah,
I really I don't know. I moved and I let it go.
yeah,
But I'm still very close there. I have close men friends
yeah,
who I had in my men's co-counseling groups. So I
yeah.
used it in my men's groups. I took it into the college classroom. I did what Harvey would call naturalization
Exactly right.
rather than all the funny, lots of the, I mean, I used some of the terminology because
Yeah,
it was comprehensible, but I tried to make it as comprehensible as I could. And the way I teach was in part shaped by RC.
yeah.
I
Yes.
every master's class in counseling psychology at Southwestern, I'd begin with having everybody pair up in mini sessions so that their attention was in the room, Zoom or otherwise. And then it was also, they were also learning counseling skills,
Yeah.
which is what I was teaching.
Yep.
So 3 minutes each, at the beginning of each class, and they understood how every meeting, every human group getting together could benefit from such a simple but powerful tool.
Well, here's me, here's you. We're still talking about it 30 plus, almost 40 years later, right? For you, it's even a little longer. And
Not
why,
much. I
why,
mean,
why? I mean, why
yeah,
are we talking that way? Why are we talking with some enthusiasm? Because it's this issue that I have. I'm sure you have it as well. I can hear it in your discourses that we've got this separation between education and counseling. In other words, the clinical model of how people heal, how people do mental health. And this divide with the clinical people here and the people who are doing education with real people with real problems, and this huge professional divide is one of the
yes,
things. Like, I mean, I've a few others, rare, but there's a few I'm using the word edutherapy. And I just really am tired of those fields being divided from each other, professionalized off into the professionalisms. And I'm sure you know what that means. Like, it's
yes,
like when it becomes an ideology of who's controlling the truth about mental health. And the fear tactics that are brought from the clinical tradition to scare teachers. You don't know anything about mental health, so get out of that field. Well, now we've got right wing people, generally conservative, coming along. Education should never be dealing with any of that interior. You can just see all those connections, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
now it's moving fast. I'm watching even Canada here, people saying, get psychology out of the classroom. And
yeah.
it's so unhuman that that's not who we are. Who's sitting there in front
No,
of you?
Mikhail, doesn't some days it feels like the Great Regression?
It's a great
You,
regression.
I mean, I like to think about the turning,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
used in collapse theory, about how we're collapsing and then we have to collapse.
yeah,
The paradigm shift has to happen, and it's pretty ugly,
yeah,
at the break point in paradigm shift theory. The break point is things look really crappy and shitty right before things change. And not necessarily changing for the better, but just changing, from that highly destructive, chaotic period to a new some kind of organization. But it's so I grieve. I mean, it's very sad to see this. On some days you think, well, what was my life about? How could this be? It's not where I thought I'd end up by my 70s. I thought, I was working toward a different kind of a caring society.
Yeah,
I was I've been
ditto.
working towards an integration of all of these things that have been separated largely because they're nested in capitalism, right? When
Professionalism,
it gets
capitalism.
professionalism and capitalism. And so, yeah, I tried to break that down and within my own degrees of freedom, wherever the educational setting I found myself or therapeutic setting. But I'll tell you this, when I was in clinical supervision
Right,
as an
right.
intern in California, 50% of that clinical supervision meeting was fear-based.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to lose my license if I hug my client.
Yeah,
I'm going to, if I
wonderful,
don't,
wonderful.
insurance is a nightmare.
Mhm.
By the end of my clinical supervision, I decided not to get a license.
I hear you.
I was just a rebel on my own.
That would have been
I took
me.
I took cash payments
Hmm.
and I taught people RC
Yep.
and I worked with that. And if I didn't teach them RC, I basically created, a way for people to discharge their trauma.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, you can see we have such same ground on that
We are
whole.
brothers from a
Oh
similar
yeah.
mother.
No, it's very similar background. You have a last quote before we go here.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
actually,
it kind of will tag in pretty nicely. Go ahead.
I've got two short ones.
Go for
Okay.
it.
And this is one that always reverberates because I do grow some of my own food and have a tiny orchard. The quote is, if I knew tomorrow the world would go to pieces, I would still plant my apple tree. And you might know that's Martin Luther, right? But the end quote is something that I also adhere to, and that is, still crazy after all these years. Paul Simon.
Nice. And I'll add my favorite one from Bruce Cockburn
Oh,
song.
I love Bruce.
The trouble with normal is it always gets worse.
Oh, then can I throw something else in?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, by the way, I've seen Bruce Cockburn, and he was one of my favorite all-time folk singers, songwriters, an amazing guitar player. And so the quote that I always come back to is the first novel the novelist Tom Robbins
Okay.
wrote was called Another Roadside Attraction, and I was reading it when I was vagabonding in Europe. And the quote is this: "The world situation is desperate as usual."
Yeah. Nice play off of my line.
Well, this has been a blast.
It's been a blast. Thanks very much. Look forward to our further engagements and look forward to your comments, viewers. Put them below, and either myself or Randy will respond to those comments over time. We take the process of engagement, participation, and education seriously, and we're co-constructing reality here. Pleasure today. Thanks, Randy.
Be well, everyone.